I decided to teach Finnick how to target cones today. It's something I hadn't done before, and this is a video of our first session with them. So I'm just using the cone similar to how I would teach a horse to target the pool noodle targets that I use. And I'm just clicking and reinforcing anytime he touches it. He has the targeting concept down pretty well, so I don't spend a whole lot of time with this before I move it away and set it on the ground. And when I am working with him and the cones as a target, what I have kind of planned to do is only reward him for one touch per cone. And that way I can teach him that I want him to go from cone to cone, and I don't have to worry about him just getting stuck at one cone. So he's completely at liberty here in a small paddock, and I have the two cones and the mat. He really loves to go onto the mat. And I'm just pointing at the cone and saying target and just kind of letting him walk around and do what he wants. Right here I tried to add cues with the neck rope that we'd been working on, but I decided to just leave that alone and focus on pointing and asking him to target. And sometimes I'll click when he touches it with his foot, but I will start to get a little pickier and make sure I'm only clicking and reinforcing when he touches it with his nose, because that's ideally what I want him to do. And the reason that I'm teaching him this is because I can then use these cones to get a little bit more duration when we're walking, either with the neck rope or someday in under saddle. And I can string cones out to kind of give him a path to travel when I have a specific path I want him to walk. So this is a couple minutes later, and I have spread the cones out a little bit farther apart. And what I'm doing is just walking to the next cone and setting it somewhere, and then calling him and telling him to target. And this all happened within the course of about 10 minutes. So he picked it up really quickly, which is awesome. You'll see here in a little bit he gets a little bored, and he is about 3 years old and he gets bored pretty quickly, so I have to switch things that I'm doing to keep him interested. But again, when you're teaching these kinds of things, it's important to just ask them to do what you're asking them to do, and then just kind of patiently wait for them to do it, and then reinforce when they do. And that's going to help them get the hang of what they're being asked to do pretty quickly. Giving them space to experiment and play around is part of their learning process. So you can see right there, he passed the cone up and then he went and got on the mat, trying to see if that's what I was asking for, and then he eventually circled back around to the cone. He really enjoys picking them up and chewing on them.
Target.
He's definitely starting to get a little bit bored here. You can see him kind of trying to nip at my hands for treats, which I do my best just to ignore. And that's part of why I keep moving the cones, is to just make them a little different every time. And there I clicked and reinforced when he touched the cone with his foot, which again, I'm going to be working towards him just touching them with his nose, but because this is the first session, I think touching it with his foot is pretty close, so I go ahead and reinforce that. And with this session, I'm really just trying to establish that he gets rewarded when he goes to the next cone, wherever that may be. So he gets a reward for touching the cone, but he doesn't continue to get rewarded for staying at that cone. It's important to make sure that you have taught your horse how to move away from a stationary target. In this way, I'm not planning on using the cones as a stationary, like stand there forever type target. But if you do, you also need to make sure you have a way to cue them to leave, because they can get really stuck on just standing at one cone forever. That's something that I've kind of done with the red mat that you see. He gets reinforced for staying on the mat, and so he tends to really like to go back to the mat and stay there, and sometimes it's challenging for me to get him to get off the mat. So here I moved the cone a little further away and put it so he would have to step over the mat. And he passed the cone up. I asked him to back up, and then he touched the cone. So I'm just changing things just a little bit just to kind of keep his interest. But you can see I do a lot of waiting, and there he's got the cone in his mouth again. But I'm still really impressed. He picked this skill up really quickly. Thanks for watching our first ever cone target training session. I hope this is helpful for some of you guys, and I would love if you would like and subscribe to my channel and drop any suggestions for other training videos you would like to see. Thanks again.